There's now a general election race for Berkshire County District Attorney. Longtime First Assistant DA Paul Caccaviello announced a write-in campaign for the seat this week. Attorney Andrea Harrington bested Caccaviello and another candidate in the Democratic primary earlier this month. Harrington, who has worked on criminal defense and labor cases, positioned herself as a criminal justice reformer. Why switch from defense to prosecution? Here's what she said.
Well, I saw that there was a huge opportunity in the role of district attorney for a leader with a big vision for that office to really transform our community. And what we've been seeing in Berkshire County is just a lot more activism and a lot more interest in new approaches to really difficult challenges.
Yeah, and for you, you're an attorney, but have no prosecutorial experience. And there's another race in Sept County where a person came out the victor of the Democratic primary, and a few across the country too. Do you think that this is a message that voters are sending, or why do you think that people are sending people to the district attorney's office without prosecutorial experience?
Yes, absolutely. People recognize here in Massachusetts and also across the country that if we want a different result from what we have been seeing from criminal justice, then we need a new approach. And what I've said on the campaign trail is if you want reform, you need a reformer. And because of the opioid crisis, I think that people are really recognizing that the war on drugs has not worked, and people have started to figure out that what communities of color have been saying for decades, that the criminal justice system really is ineffective in dealing with really tough challenges. And so that message really resonated with people in Berkshire County.
For you, it was a tight race, though. It was a three-way race, but Paul Caccaviello, who had been longtime assistant district attorney and then more recently tapped to be DA in the interim, it was a tight race between you and he, and I've heard from some folks who say, we're concerned. There was a lot of institutional knowledge through Paul Caccaviello, and they're concerned that maybe you don't understand the mechanisms of running a district attorney's office. What would you say to them?
Well, look at the results of all of that experience in the district attorney's office. In Berkshire County, we have some of the highest crime rates in the state. North Adams has the #1 crime rate per capita. Pittsfield is #9. We have much higher rates of domestic violence in Berkshire County. We have a significant opioid crisis. We have higher numbers of opioid overdose deaths than anywhere else in Western Massachusetts. And so all of that experience is really not getting good results.
But the person who's in the district attorney's office isn't responsible for those crimes. They're responsible for prosecuting them. So how are you making that connection?
Oh, well, there is an opportunity in the DA's office not just to prosecute crimes, but to work with the community to prevent crime. So what I see when I'm sitting in the courtrooms in Berkshire County is that we need a problem-solving approach to the drug problem, to the domestic violence problem, to the crime problem, because we're not going to just prosecute our way out of these issues. And so I want to implement more prevention programs in Berkshire County. Yeah.
We recently had Sheriff Tom Boulder here on Connecting Point, and I talked with him about the use of medication-assisted treatment, MAT it's called commonly, and he is against the use of medication-assisted treatment. What do you think about its use?
I am an attorney. I'm not a medical professional, and I rely on people who have expertise in the field of treatment for substance use disorder. And it's really the standard practice, well accepted in the medical community, that medication-assisted treatment it's the standard of care, and I believe people in Berkshire County deserve the best. And I don't control what goes on I won't control what goes on in the jail as district attorney, but I will be implementing diversion programs and using the power of my office to get people out of the criminal justice system and into treatment programs that are going to help them. And I will be supporting medication-assisted treatment.
And so, how do you see that working if you, as the chief prosecutor in the county, are working with the person who's in charge of the the jail and the House of Corrections in Berkshire County? You have different points of view, so how might that work?
Well, I am going to be, reaching out to Sheriff Bowler, and we're going to just continue to talk and to involve people that are really essential in providing treatment in Berkshire County, and we're going to keep working together to get on the same page because, to your point, definitely if law enforcement is working together towards a common goal and sharing the same philosophy, I think it's going to be a lot more powerful in really combating the opioid epidemic in Berkshire County.
One of the things that I heard you talk about on the campaign trail again was your belief that people do need help when they're coming out of the House of Correction and coming back into society. One of the things that Sheriff Bowler has advocated for is more caseworkers who work with those people as they're coming back into society. Mm-hmm. He hasn't received funding for that. Yeah. Is that something that you think we need more of, caseworkers who are helping these people reintegrate?
Oh, absolutely. And when you look at the amount of resources that the state of Massachusetts puts into reentry programs compared to the rest of the country, it's really shocking because we really don't put nearly the amount of resources that other states put into reentry. So yeah, I will absolutely be working with the sheriff to advocate for more resources in a lot of different contexts. And but part of my mission is really to keep people out of the House of Correction in the first place. So I'm talking about people who are not violent and providing treatment for substance use disorder and mental health issues, because I don't think that the House of Correction is really the appropriate place for people to get treatment.
Let's talk about a different drug, now legal drug, marijuana. Long time had been illegal, and there are a number of people who are incarcerated across the country because they were prosecuted on marijuana-related offenses. Yeah. Do you have any sense of the number of people who may still be imprisoned in Berkshire County related to marijuana?
I do not have the capacity to determine those numbers, and I haven't seen that that's been made available, but as part of my transition team, that is something that we're going to be looking at because I do not believe that people should be incarcerated for marijuana-related offenses that would be legal now.
Would you support pardoning those cases, looking at them and pardoning them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Something else that you talked about on the campaign trail was at the district court level, looking at bail for those cases and thinking about doing away with bail at the district court level. Well, how would that work, though?
Yeah, so what we're talking about is not seeking bail for lower level nonviolent offenses. The purpose of bail is simply to ensure that people come back to court. If people are dangerous, then there's a different procedure. We can move for a dangerousness hearing, and we can ask the judge to hold people who are dangerous. So that's a separate issue. So for people who, the idea is that if somebody pays $250 or $500, then that's going to ensure that they come back to court for their court hearings. And there have been studies that have shown that there are other ways that are probably more effective in getting people to return to court. So there are other jurisdictions that just might call defendants and remind them that they have a court hearing, or use a texting service to remind people that they have hearings. Because when people are charged with crimes, they're innocent until proven guilty. That's their constitutional right. And for people that are not dangerous, that have not been found guilty, to be incarcerated because they can't come up with maybe a $200 bail that's not fair. I've worked with a lot of people who's that really wreaks havoc on somebody's life because it affects their job, it affects their housing. I've worked with clients to figure out what we're going to do with their kids, and is DCF going to be involved? So that's when people talk about the criminalization of poverty, like that's what they're talking about.